I'm sorry. I don't know why I did that. All right, let's rewind. All right, welcome back to the JavaScript series. My name is Wilfred, and in this video, we're going to discuss function. Yes, there was a video about functions previously, and I made that video, which is part of the Dawn Code series, which is something I plan to post every morning, which is just short videos explaining some topics within a short amount of time. And but in this video now, we're going to dive deeper into functions. We're going to learn, we're going to dissect functions, break things down, which is why I was doing that gesture at first. I'm doing it again. I'm sorry, but yes, let's break functions down. All right, now we are back. So before I start explaining functions, we've been doing something all this while, which is, you know, outputting stuff in the console like this. So we do console.log, then we put in a certain value. Let's say call me a cook. I don't know how I came up with that. uh, so yeah, so then we refresh our browsers to see the output in our console. Now, to also do this, we can also like sort of, you know, create a variable. Let's say let's instruction. Let's call it instruction because we are giving an instruction here. Instruction. Set it to be this string here, like this, and then console log the instruction here. When we save and refresh our value, we'll see, let me clear this console and refresh again. We'll see the, call me a cook being logged in the console. All right, we've been able to give our instructions successfully, but we want to also give other instructions as well. And to do that, we'll have to come back here again and then create another instruction. Let me just call it instruct, and then say call me another person here, like this. So we'll do something like this. So then we'll do another console.log instruction, instruction like this, and then refresh before we see our second instruction in the console. We already see where this is going, because if we keep on creating new instructions every time we want to give an instruction to someone, we'll have to write a lot of instructional code all the time. We'll have to create the variable, assign it the string, and then now console log it into the console, which is very tedious. In programming, there is something known as dry. It's a rule set in place, or a set of instructions that we need to follow when writing our code. Dry simply means don't repeat yourself. So we are not supposed to write the same code over and over again to do the same thing. So yeah, even though dry is not something that is forcefully imposed on anyone, so you are still free to write your code the way you want to write them, but it's really a good way, or a good measure put in place to help us make our code much more understandable to others. So how do we apply dry in this case? So we can see we are repeating the same thing over and over again. And to do that, we basically need to like put all our, our code into one box. And then when we do something within that box, we can now produce a value. The box in this case is what we want to learn today, which are functions. Functions are basically like a template where we have, or we make some operations and then output a value after that operation has been made. All right, now let's take a look at what functions are and how to create functions as well. So I will remove that code from there, and then create my own functions. So to create functions, we type function, which is a keyword built into JavaScript to help us initialize our function. This is an initializer. We don't need to know what it is doing under the hood. We just have to know that to create a function, we need to initialize our function with this keyword here. Now, we need to give our function an identifier or a name. So it could be any name. In this case, I'll call it give instructions like this without spaces. So instructions like this, followed by some parentheses. I'll come back to this parenthesis later on, and then the curly braces. Now, within these curly braces, this opening and closing word is where we put our code block like this. Sorry, our code block. Now, this code block contains everything we want to do, or this code block represents everything we want our functions to do, for us, our give instruction function to do for us. Now, within this function, we can also say console.log call me a cook like this. When we save and refresh our browser, we don't see anything. Okay, so what is going on here? We said our function will help us reduce code repetition, make our life easier, but we don't see anything in the console after we refresh our console. And our good console, old console.log would have just giving us the value immediately we refresh our browser. Well, what is going on here is that our function is still here, but it is waiting for us to tell it to do something. And in this case, we need to call it. So how do we call a function? We call a function by typing the name of the function followed by some parentheses like this. Now, this parenthesis means that this function should run everything that is within it. So when we refresh our browser now, we'll see the value of the call me a cook in the console. So after creating a function, we need to call it. All right, we've been able to call our function. We got some value into the console. That is all good, but really our function is not really doing anything different from what we were doing before, which is simply console logging a value to the console, right? So, and we said functions are reusable, and you can basically use them multiple times, which is without needing to write this console log over and over again. So you can do something like this. Let me duplicate this code and then refresh my browser. You can see that the call me a cook is being printed into the console 3 times, which is awesome, right? But really we are not getting our function to like give different instructions based on when we call it, right? So to do this, we simply need to tweak our function a little bit. We need to tell it that the output value that we expect from it has to be dynamic. And to do that, we pass in something into our function called parameters. Now, these parameters can be as much values as we want. It can be a single value, and it can be anything, but they are just variables that belong to this function. So to do that, we simply type in the parameters we want here. Let's just call it instruction. Let's call it instruction, or let's call it instruction. I wanted to call it something, but I'm afraid it's a keyword in the JavaScript language. So this is the instruction here. Now, this instruction, when we hover it, we can see that code editor is telling us that instruction is declared, but its value is never read. Parameter instruction, right? So, how can we use this instruction? So to use this instruction, we basically, let's just console log it from from the function here. So let's say instruction here, right? Save, and then we refresh our browser. Now we see that our function here is printing undefined into the console. Now we need to understand why this undefined is here. This undefined doesn't mean that the value of this function does not exist. It basically means that okay, we've created a variable, right? But then JavaScript is simply assigning it undefined, which is a data type or a value that JavaScript assigns to variables that have not been given a value. So let's say, let me comment this out quickly, and then log. Let me create a variable. Let me just say to do, and then console log to do into our console. You see that the value here being printed in the console will be the same as what we were getting in this function. So it's basically saying that we've created the variable, but we've not given it a value. So JavaScript will help us give it a value by default. Now, I will simply delete these ones here and uncomment my code here. Now, let's start by solving this undefined issue that we're having here, which is this line here. So to do this, we need to give this instruction a value. We need to pass in the value we want to, the dynamic value we want into this function call here. And to do that, we can pass in anything. We can pass in a number. When we save and refresh, we'll see the number is being printed in the console. We can pass in a string like this. Let's say hello world like this. When we save and refresh, we see hello world is being printed in the console. Now this value we pass into the function call. When we are calling the function, the value we pass into it is known as arguments. When we create the function, the value we pass into it, this variable here, is known as parameters. So that's the difference between parameters and arguments. So we can see already that we've been able to print out whatever we want from this function, which is already looking good. So when we call this function the next time, we can say about to give, let me just instruction, let me just put it like this, about to give instruction. When we save and refresh, we can see that the value is different from the hello world we have here. Now our value changes. The function is making our life easier and easier and easier and easier. Okay, I don't know why I said that. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. Basically all functions help us do, right? So we can use this function as many times as we want to do different things for us. We can say this function to do something else. We can give it another value, like I said, if it's a number, any type of data type that we want, we can pass it into the function, and whatever we do here will basically determine the fate of our results in the function. Now, we've seen the beauty of functions. We've seen how we can reuse our functions to give, to produce dynamic values, like passing in arguments once our parameters is set, and then doing different things into the console, right? Printing out different stuff into the console. But we don't really want our functions to be printing stuff into the console. We want our function to do something else. Now, to let our function produce values for us, we need to tell the function that once it is called, it should, I want to use a word, but I think it's not right. Let me use another word. We want our function to, oh God. Okay, we want our function to pour out, what our function to pour out some values for us, some results for us. So to do that, we use a keyword built into the functions, this function here in JavaScript. So to do that, we use the return keyword and we say return this instruction for us. Now when we comment out this console.log here and refresh our browser, we don't see anything in the console. Now why is this happening? This is not a bug, this is not an error. At first you might think it is, but it is not. Our function is being called, all right, we are passing it a value, but we are not using our function to do something. Yeah, let me just put it that way. We're not telling our function to like give us a result of what it has done within itself. So to do that, we simply need to use it. So by using it, I mean, let's console.log the function itself. So let's say, let me just copy this hello world here and paste it here like this. When we save and refresh our browser, we see hello world being printed into the console. Now we are now using function up to an advanced level so far. So after the return keyword, anything we put here, like a console.log, console.log after, and let me put another console.log above it. Sorry, let me move this one at the top to the top here. After, and let's put this one, say before. Now every value after the return keyword is ignored. You can see this here is being grayed out, and this one here is still there, right? When we refresh our browser, we can see that we are getting before and hello world, right? So so anything you put after the return keyword will be ignored automatically. Just as we're able to assign, console log the value this give instruction function is producing for us, we are also able to do something like assigning this function here, this function call, the function call, not the function, the function call to a variable. Let's say, let me create a variable called let's to do, for instance, and assign it the call to this function here. Let me just cut it and paste it here, and then we'll be able to log this to do here and see the value that this function here produced for us. Let me change this a little bit. Hello world for JS, right, for JavaScript. Now when we refresh our browser, we can see that the before that we have here is being printed into the console, and then we have our hello world as well in the console here. Hello world for JS, as I clicked it. Okay, now just as we're able to call, assign to this variable this function call here, we are also allowed to assign to a variable a function creation, and this process is known as, or this way of creating function is known as function expression. And let's take a look at function expression and dissect what is happening there. So I will call this let me also call it to do as well. To do, and I'll just create a function similar to this one. Let's call it function, I'll say give order this time around. Give order, and then just tell it to console.log something for us. Let's say hello order. Now when we save and refresh, we will not see anything in our console yet. We need to call this function, and to do that we call it from the name of the variable we assign to it. So to do, and then we pass it the parentheses. Now this to do becomes what our function's name, and we also have another function name here. Now, normally we would not have a function name here and simply assign the function without its name and the code block to this to do variable, and this is known as an anonymous function. So when we refresh our browser, we see hello order in the console, right? But when we put in something like this, the name here, and refresh our browser again, we still see hello order being printed into the console, right? So this is known as a named function expression, and without the name is known as a function expression, simply like that. So that's function expressions. You can put in your parameters here and say, okay, the parameters has to make a sense. So let me say order like that, and then I'll just pass in by order. Let's say wake up like this. When we save and refresh, oh, now I've not, so let me return the order because I've not done anything with the function here, and refresh. Now we can see it's still not being printed into the console because we are calling this function that we are not assigning it to a console.log. The return keyword will not print into the console directly, so we have to log it into the console. So I'll say to do and then pass in let me just pass in that function call like this. Save and refresh. Now we can see hello order is being printed to the console and wake up is being printed as well, and with the name of the function still being present like this, give order, this will still work. So save and refresh, it is still working. Let me clear it and save, refresh it again. You see the value is there. Now let me show you something quickly. Let's say we did have this order here, return order here, and let me just copy this order here and console log the order into the console like this. Now when we save and refresh, we see wake up is being printed, which is the argument we pass into this function call here, and then undefined is also printed into the console. Now why is this happening? Well, the reason why this is happening is because we are calling the function without explicitly returning a value. Now you might say, okay, we call this function right here when we did something like this. Let me just comment out this one here like this, and we passed it a value. Let's log in the hello world. I'll also remove, let me remove this one and just log in the parameter itself. Now when we refresh, when we save and refresh, we can see hello world is being printed, but there is no undefined here. All right, I'll quickly like to rectify something. The undefined is not only returned like this in this case here, where we console log this hello world and then there is undefined after it. It's not only returned in function expressions. When we create a function and console log the function itself without returning a value, we'll get the undefined, as we see in this console here. When we refresh, the browser still gives us the undefined. Thanks. But the reason why this is happening is because this is a function expression. Now it's like saying, telling some okay, we know that variables are boxes, right? And within those boxes we can put stuff. So this function call here is assigning is expected to assign a value to the to do variable which we have here, but then it's not doing that. It's simply telling the to do that there is an order, which is this console.log that we have here. So when you see this undefined in your code, it basically means that your function is not returning a value when you assign it to a variable, which is when you are creating a function expression. So that's it for, you know, something you really have to be careful of or to be aware of, because you might think this is a bug. It's really not a bug, but it's just that your function was not giving this to do variable here, which is also a function name by virtue of this function expression here. Or let's remove this name here, and when we refresh, we can still see that the undefined is being printed in the console. So this is basically empty, right? It is doing something which is whatever this function, this anonymous function tells it to do here, but it doesn't get a value from the function itself. When we put return now, and when we refresh, you can see that the the undefined is gone, and the wake up is being printed into the console. All right, that's it for this video, and I would like to point out that this way of creating function is not the only way we can create function in JavaScript, right? We can create functions using arrow functions. There's this thing called immediately invoked function expression, which we'll also look at in the next video. If you found this video helpful, please comment in the comment section below what you learned, and also don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.